This is the review of the administration code training. The rationale for administration code training is for professional ethics, educational defensibility, and student ownership. Basically, this is to protect us and the students, make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing during testing. Upon completion of this training, you will need to sign this document right here. It will be in the mailbox room, so that shows that you have completed this training now for the second time this year. Test security. So basically, we need to know and teach concepts. You can visually scan student test books. I would not recommend making a copy of alert papers, but let me know if you see an alert paper. And I will collect and destroy any notes, rough drafts, or scratch paper that needed to be destroyed if that comes up with any of our testing coming up here in the spring. What you can't do is take notes or discuss test content with students. You can't look over their shoulder and reproduce, look at the test questions and then reproduce them in any way, shape, or form. Continuing with test security, I can give you the test and manuals prior to the test window, which I've already done for my ACT people. What you can't do is keeping the test books in classrooms that is not double locked, or leaving them alone with students where they could have access to secure test materials at any time. Test security continued. We'll need to train the staff that are taking test materials from school, homebound, or hospitalized students, and then any students that need to use technology, and what they'll have is tutorials. So our science K-Prep, or on-demand K-Prep, and the math and reading 10th grade tests are all going to be online, but there will be tutorials to show the students how to use that online program when that comes around. Monitoring test security. So this is my favorite. So erasure analysis and score analysis can lead to discovery of inappropriate practices. So they're going to do some data forensics to see if there were cheat sheets used, if test administrators led students to answers, adults were changing student answers, or students were receiving help from test administrators. Test security check for understanding. Please take a minute to answer these questions. Is it acceptable to take photos of test items for next year so you know you're teaching the correct content? No, you cannot reproduce test content in any way, shape, or form. Is it acceptable for teachers to receive test administration manuals? Yes. Is it acceptable to read only the bold type instruction in the test administration manuals and skip the other directions? No. The proctor reads everything in the manual, and the highlighted you read out loud to students. Administration practices. So a test administrator or a test proctor, same thing, must always circulate the test, the classroom, make sure students are working in the right section at the right time. They're not getting out anything they're not supposed to be getting out, such as electronic devices. And the scheduling test sessions, that would be on me. So I'll make sure that we have the right number of kids in a test session at a time. Administration practices continued. So you are allowed to give words of encouragement and general instructions to students throughout testing. For example, I told some people if their head is down, absolutely hit on their desk and say, you need to get your head up, try your best, but you can't help them in any way, shape, or form that would lead them to an answer. Test administration continuing. Students are allowed a restroom break, but timing does not stop if they leave the classroom. And that's really all we allow. We don't do interval restroom breaks. And then we schedule around lunch, so we're not affecting lunch as well. Not acceptable. Do not leave students alone with test materials at any time. Once you get them from my office or another office, depending on where you're picking up test materials, you must keep them with you at all times. Test administration. Students who exhibit disruptive behavior during testing should test at a different location. If you know there's a student that would be disruptive during testing, let me know that ahead of time and we can test them in a separate room so they don't disrupt others testing. Students should be seated during the entire test session so they're not disrupting other students. Administration practices continued. Test administrators observing any time limits and following the specific directions in the provided manuals. So follow what it says in the manual. I will catch up with students who need makeup testing if they're absent or they have to leave early for whatever reason. You have to follow the order of test in the manual and the time in the manual. Administration practices for accommodations. So basically, students can get, some kids with accommodations get extended time. They have to be using their standard time in order to get their extended time. And basically, we just have to follow whatever their accommodation is on their IEP or their 504 plan and be consistent with that and what they've been using throughout the year on the state system assessment as well. So I've already said this once, but we've got to follow the order in which the test sections are in the manual. Reporting concerns regarding test materials. This kind of explains how you would report something if you saw an error or you thought it was an error in a test. So you would never want to give any content. You would email me or call me with the number of the question, the form of the book, which book it is, very general like that, so you're not giving me any content information. All right, go ahead and answer these 3 questions, please. Is it acceptable to indicate to a student the appropriate work area in a test booklet or student response booklet after a test session has begun? Yes, it is, because you're not helping them with content. You're just telling them where to put the answers. Is it acceptable to point out to a student that he or she hasn't written enough for a response? No, not acceptable. Is it acceptable to allow a student a few minutes beyond the stop time to finish if they have been working diligently throughout? Absolutely not. Adhere to the timing, the times provided by the manual. Okay, next section, classroom materials. Students can use dictionaries and thesaurus. That's only going to be on the K-Prep on-demand writing, which I've been told they're going to provide that online this year, so that will be interesting. Allow a student to have non-content related puzzles. So this is one there. They said students can have non-content materials out after they finish a test, but you'll hence my note there, Simon Kenton does not allow this. You're not allowed this on the ACT, and I just feel like it's easier if we don't allow this on any test. So students will have nothing on their desk the entire test session. Apologize for that. Classroom materials, calculators. So they can use a calculator on tests that allow them, and it has to be an approved calculator, and schools can provide an approved calculator to students, or they may use their own. Classroom materials, electronic devices. They cannot use electronic devices, so before every test, I always tell my proctors, collect any electronic devices, cell phones, iPods, smartwatches, even Fitbits, beforehand, and do not give them back until all test materials are collected at the end of the test session. Test administrators can use your cell phone to contact me if there's something going on where you can't use your classroom phone. Classroom materials, walls and bulletin boards. So basically, you got to cover up anything that has content on it. So you can't have a word wall, no calendars, no Bill of Rights. You can have the periodic table or a geographic map can be on your wall. That's about it. Everything else needs to be covered or taken down if you're in a testing room. So there's some examples of what you can have on your wall. Here's some examples of what you cannot have on your classroom wall. Next questions. Is it acceptable for a teacher to use his or her personal cell phone to communicate with another teacher about a testing situation? No. You can use your cell phone to contact me, the test coordinator. That's about it. Is it acceptable to allow students to use their own approved calculators? Yes. Approved is the key word there. Is it acceptable to allow students to read library or personal books as each student finishes and test materials are collected? Kentucky says yes. Simon Kenton says no. Test preparation. Instruction. So basically, they're saying you can't stop instruction and have test prep for a week prior to the ACT or prior to the science K-Prep test. You have to have this as part of your normal instruction that continues throughout the year. Test simulation, you can embed test taking strategies in regular content instruction, scrimmages, benchmark testing. All that is okay as long as it's part of instruction throughout the year, which is what we do here. Test prep courses are allowed, and there's a lot of outside courses our students attend, and that's perfectly acceptable. And what we want to do is we want to always provide feedback to our students when we give any practice tests and scrimmages throughout the year, which our teachers do. Here's a little chart on monitoring test security, the allegations category. So there's a lot of different things that can be considered an allegation. So some examples are helping students with answers, making corrections, discussing items, leaving materials unattended, removing a test book from a testing location, not following their test schedule, working ahead or working back in prior sections, giving the wrong accommodations to students, having any kind of electronics out during testing, misplacing or failing to collect test booklets, or giving feedback allowing students to change answers after testing. So apparently all those have happened in Kenton County at one time or the other, is what I've been told. So we've been pretty fortunate here at Simon Kenton. So let's continue that and make sure that we're being the best test administrator we can be. Monitoring test security, allegations process. This just kind of walks you through the process of what happens in the event that there is an allegation. It would come to me. I go to Ms. Setters, our DAC. She then has to report that to KDE, and then they go through a series of steps here and determine if you need to have a training. The commissioner, I guess, makes the final determination if there needs to be a training for the teacher or the BAC or the DAC or not. And that is it for our test administration review training for the spring. Please make sure you stop by the mailbox workroom and sign off that you've completed this training. Thank you all for your attention.